Hi, my name is Zoe and I'm representing SME4Labour today. We are a group where we'd like to establish connections with small to medium enterprises across the UK, and in doing so we cannot ignore the contributions that the Indian community have provided us and the contributions they've made to our economy. So without further ado, I would just like to introduce our guests. We have Barry Gardiner. He is the Shadow Secretary of State for International Trade. We have Uday Nagaraju, who's an exec member for Labour Friends of India and also the foundation director of the Mahatma Gandhi Future Leaders Programme. We also have Virendra Sharma, who is a counsellor. So I would just like to pass the mic over to who would like to start.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much, Zoe. Thank you very much, Zoe. As usual, being from Labour Friends of India, our voice has to be loud, and it's very loud. The mic is very loud anyway. Just one small correction, Mr. Virendra Sharma is a Member of Parliament from Ealing Southall and a patron of a number of Indian community organizations from north to east to west to south. There are probably 100 organizations plus he'd probably be a patron of and a big friend of Labour Friends of India and the Indian community. Thank you very much. This event that we're conducting today is in partnership with SME4Labour and Labour Friends of India. Thank you very much to SME4Labour for supporting us and to be able to run this event. Labour Friends of India, very briefly, is an organisation that has started long ago by Barry Gardiner, who was a long-term chair and who was awarded Padma Shri for starting Labour Friends of India. It has been revamped in the last couple of years, and what we try to do is act as bridge between the Indian community and the Labour Party. We preserve the interests of Indian community within the party and preserve the interests of Labour Party within the Indian community. So ultimately, what we feel that Indian values of Indian community very much align with the values of Labour Party, and with the support of our very senior members of parliamentarians, this is what we do. Our chair is Rajesh Agarwal, the Deputy Mayor of London for Business, who unfortunately could not make it today as he's ill. So I had to pick this up at the last minute and just I'm running it. Now, we are expecting a few more speakers. So really the topic today is the contribution of Indian community to the UK economy. The reason for this, the output of this, is that we're not just looking to celebrate the contribution of Indian community, but also to see how the party and the community can work together in further enhancing the contribution to benefit the UK society, and also look to areas where there have been challenging and how do we address that. Before I ask our stellar panelists to give their opening remarks, I just want to bring to your notice a recent report by Grant Thornton and the Federation of the FICCI in the UK. The report is India in the UK, the Diaspora Effect. So what it looks at is the economic contribution made by Indian community within the UK. If we look at some key points there, what the report has analysed is out of the 65,000 or so Indian companies, they have looked at the figures of 654 companies which have a turnover of 100,000 plus in a year. Looking at those, the combined revenue is 36.84 billion. The total number of employees is 174,000 employees, and these companies pay a corporation tax of 1 billion plus. Now, this is only those 654 companies, and it does not include the companies the Indian companies who have branches here, like Tata and those companies. That figure would completely go, it would make a different figure. Very quickly, the key sectors seem to be hospitality, 19%, health and pharmacy, 15%, retail and wholesale, 13%, real estate and construction, 13%. Regional-wise, London has got 52%, but it's not just London. South, 13%, North, 13%, and Midlands, 11%. The contribution extends well well beyond businesses. It extends to science, arts, media, and most importantly, NHS. I mean, this is not an exhaustive list, it goes on. Just as a figure, because it's very difficult to get official figures of the total number of doctors of Indian origin, we've taken figures from the British Association of Physicians of Indian Origin, a voluntary organization, which estimates that there are 50,000 medical professionals of Indian origin in the NHS. And their contribution, of course, is phenomenal, has been phenomenal during the COVID period. So, I mean, these are some of the facts which kind of lay the foundation for our discussion today. So, first, I'd request Barry Gardiner, Padma Shri Barry Gardiner, to give his opening remarks, also looking into the question of does the party recognize this contribution of Indian community. So 3 minutes for each of our esteemed panelists for their opening remarks. As we have other speakers joining in, we will fit in. So the format would be, I'm expecting 3 questions and answers from our panelists, and then followed by a Q&A. So over to you, Barry.
Thanks very much. Look, if you look at the Eastern Asian rich list, last year it totaled £99.5 billion of assets. And 99% of the people on that list created their wealth after coming to the UK. It's not inherited wealth. If you look at the Sunday Times Rich List, you'll find that most of the people on there have inherited their wealth. This is not. This is the problem that the UK economy has. We don't actually produce enough. Our productivity is low. And what the Rich List shows is that these people have created this wealth virtually from nothing after they came here to the UK. The community dominant sectors in the UK, retail, 75% of all convenience stores in the UK, healthcare, just like you said, 50% of all community pharmacies owned by the Asian community, care homes, and now hotels, some of the biggest hotel groups in the UK, again, owned by the Asian community. You just have to look at the Aurora Group, Mathari Brothers, you can see the names up there. And again, as you said, doctors in the NHS. If you look at the fastest growing companies in Britain, this year's tracker suggests that the economic conditions of the past year, which have been pretty bad, my goodness, it's nothing to what they're going to be next year. Sorry, excuse me, get rid of that. I should have put that on silent. Oh, it is on silent. It's nothing to what the economic conditions are going to be next year if you've seen the morning papers and seen what's happened to the economy in just, 2.5 weeks of less stress. But the Grant Thornton track says that almost all the businesses on this year's list have featured in their previous years. 37 companies of the 900 Indian companies in the UK have had revenue growth of at least 10%. So the picture that you have is a combined turnover, as you said, of over £1 billion. It's actually £1.6 billion. And the employees are 5,000 employees that have been from India coming here into the UK and been brought in. One of the most important things, I think, if you look at the way in which the Indian business community is developing here, is actually the importance of the new visa arrangements between the two countries, because that's allowing for a much faster, freer flow of people between Indian companies and the UK. And that's really good for our business here. I'll leave it there as openers, but I want to leave you with one further thought, and that's, it's actually about the way in which Indian companies do business. And you know just how many of those companies are family companies. But it's not just that they're family companies, it's that they have family values. And I was sent a story by chance this week by a friend about when Ratan Tata was invited to come to receive an award at Buckingham Palace from then Prince, now King Charles. And everything was ready, it was the day before, and Ratan Tata phoned up his people here and said that he was very sorry he couldn't come. And his office here said, "What do you mean you can't come? This is Buckingham Palace. This is Prince Charles. What on earth are you thinking about?" And he said, "No, and I'm not sure if I've got their names right, but it was Tito and something else. His two dogs, and one of them had fallen very sick. I think it had an injury or something. And he said, I can't possibly leave the dogs." And they just down the phone in complete amazement said, "Are you serious? You're telling me that you're passing up an award from Prince Charles at Buckingham Palace because you've got to take your dogs to the vet? You're Ratan Tata. Can't somebody else take the dogs to the vet?" And he said, "No, they can't." So this guy had to phone up the palace. "Terribly sorry, Your Royal Highness," and explained that Ratan Tata would not be coming to the award ceremony. Prince Charles simply said, "That's the man. That's the man." And we have to recognize the values that drive Indian companies in this country. They are family values. They do put bonds, values, before wealth and ostentation and award. And I think that's what makes them successful, because they're value-driven organisations. And you said, is that something that the Labour Party recognises? Well, we are the Labour Party, and we do.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Barry. So, I mean, I know we recognize it, but I just wanted that to come out from you. So, over to Mr. Virendra Sharma, Member of Parliament, and also the Chair of All-Party Parliamentary Group, for your opening remarks, please.
Thank you very much, Uday, and thank you, Barry, for your opening comments. Let me thank Labour Friends of India and SMEs Group collectively joining and organizing this morning. Because it's early morning, I know after the late night visits to the different events, many people have a difficulty to come. But those who come here this morning, thank you very much. Both Uday and Barry has given the figures that what is the investments taking place from India to here, job creation, the change of the mood. I take a little bit you people back where we were and where we are now, both in the relationship point of view. We had a long history, Britain and India, over 400 years of relationship. It was maybe master and servant, ruler and the subjects. Now, as the partners, look at the move we have made. Now we are the partners in the global economy. We are the partners in the global community. We are not as maybe 300 years, 200 years, or even 75 years ago. What was the relationship? So it means that the mood have been changed. Recognition is there. Role of the diaspora in the last 50 plus years in this country is well recognized by all the institutions. Whether they are the trade people, they're running business, they want to run business, whether it is the professional relationship, as Uday and Barry said, 50% of medical NHS is run by the Indian origin people. I can tell you, when I was a bus conductor in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, there was an old saying that if the Indians withdraw their labor for one day, the transport system will collapse in this country for one day. So it means that it was mutually agreed that the Indian community, diaspora, immigrants in general, they have contributed to build the economy of this country. Now the changes has come. We are not talking about me, I, here in the UK. We are talking about globally, how we can improve the economy globally, how we can provide the education services globally, how we can defend the rights of the minorities and those disadvantaged groups globally. We are not only talking about how to protect and improve the lives of the people in this country. We are talking about globally. And both Britain and India together have a major role to play. Now, I was reading, now India has become number 5 and Britain has gone to number 6. So, India has taken over. It does not mean the relationship has changed. The relationship is still there. And I think that you, when you go back into your areas, in your professions, you can say it, that we need to improve the world economy. We need to improve the world standard of living, housing conditions, care for elderly, child labor to be demolished, education for girls and women throughout. So all over, it is a global relationship we are talking about, but majorly is Britain and India have a role to play, and they're playing a very important role. And I hope that in the coming years, we will be in power. When I say we, the Labour will be in power. I'm quite confident Barry and other senior member of parliament will play their part to make sure that that path where it is democratic, economic, prosperity is taken over, that they play their part in that. I will play my part to make sure, because I have a double interest in it. British Indian, but also born in India, brought up in India, now here. I wanted to build those relationships, and we can all work together to do that. And I look forward to, in partnership with my colleagues here today, and the message will go out, so how best we can improve those. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Shabaji, for the opening remarks. We just have another guest now, Darren Jones, Member of Parliament from Bristol North West. And Darren also supported us phenomenally on Labour Friends of India events, and he was the co-chair until recently. Darren, we just started with opening remarks, and we've we've given some figures on the contribution of Indian community to the UK economy, with a question as to how does the party recognize the contribution of the Indian community? So, opening remarks to you, please, Darren.
Sure. Shall I just? Oh, very good. Well, it's great to be with you this morning, and I'm afraid I'm losing my voice, so I may not speak for very long. But I just want to make one reflection. It's not just about recognising the important contribution that Indian businesses make in the UK, but also recognising the deep strategic value of the UK-India partnership for outward investment and collaboration in India as well. We already know that there is enormous benefit, and more benefit that can be had from our collaboration between our universities, in terms of our education, our innovation, and our science, but also from an industrial collaboration perspective, whether it's in advanced technologies, or dual use of defence technologies, or in our action on climate change and clean energy. There's an enormous amount of work that we can and should be doing together. And this comes up time and time again, not just in London and the political debates we have in Westminster, but internationally. I was in Washington DC only last week, talking with the Americans about national security investments in the UK. And there's a clear desire for democracies to be able to work together on critical supply chains, whether it's in semiconductor technologies, whether it's in cutting-edge technologies like blockchain or cryptocurrencies, or whatever it might be. There is a democratic angle to industrial collaboration, and of course, India has enormous amounts of innovation potential and an enormous amount of opportunity for the UK to partner with India. And the other thing I wanted to mention as well is, of course, the Commonwealth and our existing multilateral relationships, where I think it's fair to say we could be doing much more together, not just on kind of cultural exchanges and friendship exchanges, but in terms of our investments in all directions in tackling climate change and investing in our clean energy transition. And I think there's, an incoming Labour government, I would hope, with the new Foreign Affairs team, will recognise the value of that Commonwealth relationship and using that as a vehicle, as equal partners with the many nations in the Commonwealth to be able to do that work together. So I would just say that, of course, we recognise the valuable contributions that Indian businesses and entrepreneurs and innovators and financiers make in the UK, and I'm sure that's been discussed in detail today. But I think it's more than that. I think it's what we can build on together internationally between our two countries, but also between our friends and partners around the world. I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Darren. So moving on to the next question, which is specific to the diaspora in the UK. It's one of the reports, the report that I mentioned earlier, where it says that 50% of Indians are qualified to degree level in the UK and 40% are in managerial and professional occupations. Now this, if we consider the younger generation, the figures might be much different. The figures might be much more. So, which obviously shows the aspirations, the ambitions of the Indian community. Now, how can we, as in the party, when we get into government, utilize these aspirations of the younger generation for a better Britain, and build world-class leaders in business, in science, in technology, and in other areas? I would just change the order now and go back to Darren, as the chair of the EIS committee as well.
Sure, and I think I unsuccessfully turned this off, so hopefully that's fine. Yeah, I'm just coming. Well, look, in the UK, we know that there are not enough people today with the right skills in the right places to do all the jobs that we have today in the UK, let alone the jobs of tomorrow. And so there is enormous opportunity there to work internationally in bringing people in either temporarily or permanently to work with us in the UK. And I know that there is a lot of potential excitement and opportunity when we talk about maybe visa reform as part of trade deal negotiations, bringing young people in from India that might want to come to British universities and will hopefully stay and help make a contribution to these parts of our economy and these growing sectors. Because whilst of course we want to leading the sector. You can't actually do it alone. And London and the South East in particular, but also the UK, has benefited in many decades from being a place where internationally lots of talented people come together and innovate as very diverse groups. And the Conservatives have, for a long time, wanted to try to close that down, albeit relatively unsuccessfully, and they keep talking about restraining migration figures, but they've recognised now that actually the size of the British economy requires some level of talented and worker migration into the UK in order for us to generate our full potential around economic growth in the domestic economy, as well as in our export opportunities around the world. So I hope that, I'm sure that the Labour government will be recognising that whether it's on science, whether it's on technology, whether it's on economic growth generally, we want to create those opportunities where economic growth can really flourish, which comes from our understanding. That tends to happen where we have diverse communities of people coming together and innovating, creating goods and services in the UK, which is great for the UK economy, but also great for our exports.
Yeah, one side is bringing people from abroad, but, so these figures very much relate to the Indian community in the UK. So how do we leverage the aspirations, ambitions, and the hard work of this generation, this younger generation, to contribute towards the UK economy?
Sure. Well, I would hope that often comes down to the fact that people feel confident about the economy they're living in. So young people will be excited about the future if they can see the opportunities in front of them and understand that they can do good things in the world, get on in life, make money, and be able to provide for them and their families when they get to the stage of having families and wanting to think about those types of things. So I think actually that's not really a question, I hope it's not a question, where your kind of ethnicity or background is a determinant factor. What it is about an underpinning requirement that the British economy, as we all know, is a pretty negative place right now. People are very worried, whether it's about their mortgages or energy bills or their ability to be able to secure investment and so on and so forth. So it must at the moment for many young people feel quite worrying when they look at the British economy and what's happening. We would obviously want to turn that around, which I have to be honest is not easy because of the scale of the mess that we've been inheriting as an incoming Labour government. But people being able to see a growing Labour economy, growing UK economy with the opportunities that we want to create through economic growth, a whole swathe of investments that we're announcing over the course of the conference today and the manifesto over the months, I think will create that sense of excitement.
Thank you. Barry?
Yeah. Paradoxically, I would say that one of the things that would be of most help to those people who are highly skilled and most entrepreneurial is if a few more businesses in the UK were able to go into liquidation. And that seems a very odd thing to say. I'm sure the chair of the Business Energy and Industrial Strategy Committee will be wondering quite what I'm on about. It's this. Businesses in the UK stay solvent because they depend on the government to subsidise their workers' wages. Far too many businesses in the UK are paying people so little that those businesses, those people, those workers, are actually in receipt of universal credit to top up the money that they are being paid to live on, because they can't afford to live on the wages that they have. So if one were to introduce a minimum wage, let's say, for the sake of argument, £15 an hour, you may see a lot of businesses who are actually relying on making profit by exploiting their workforce instead of being a profitable business that can pay them enough to live on. What does that do? It begins to bring into the whole business community the enterprise, the innovation, the investment that you need to drive a successful, productive business. Because businesses can't survive unless they invest, unless they innovate, unless they bring in that talent. And that's what I'd like to see. I think a successful economy is one that actually has more churn in its businesses than we currently do. And that's because, not because, the lack of productivity in the UK is not because British workers are flabby and refuse to do the work. The lack of productivity in the UK is because the businesses are flabby and they're too reliant on government topping up workers' wages. So I actually think that it's really important that we bring innovation into our business. We bring that investment, and we're very poor about the amount of investment, research and development that we bring, and how we bring small-scale businesses, great ideas, that the sort of people that you're talking about, they have those great ideas. They want to translate them, from that initial stage of research through to a development stage and then commercialize it. And actually, as a country, we're not making that step easy. We're not getting those brilliant ideas through that development stage and into full commercialization. So I think we need much more innovation, much more drive for investment and research, all the talents that the people that you're talking about can bring. But I do think that Darren's absolutely right to talk about the new visa schemes. Let's be fair to the government. They have actually introduced visa schemes for, 3,000 young graduates to be able to come and spend time here in the UK, the new postgraduate schemes. Actually, both ways that one works. That postgraduate scheme works so that star graduates here can go into Indian institutions and do research there. Now, this is the sort of engagement and mix of our intelligentsia, of our entrepreneurial people that Darren's talking about when he talked about, engaging more widely. And I think actually that free movement should be enhanced. We should have more young, smart business leaders going on those exchanges, deepening that relationship, and I think that would improve the business conditions that we have in the UK enormously.
Thank you. Mr. Sharma?
I think that we go into the practicalities here. The future generations, if we look at right from the beginning, that my generation before me, they were unskilled labor force. Now the young generation born, brought up here, are well educated, got all the knowledge from the country here. So what I mean that is that they know the system and they know the skills they need to use. But do we have enough skills here? Is the businesses and the government of the day is willing to share the skills with the rest of the world, particularly when we are talking about India and Britain relationship. India is fast growing economy. Education is fast growing. There will be under 30 youth skilled workforce, roughly about in India in millions, is not in hundreds. Is Britain is willing to have the partnership? If they are willing to have the partnership on equal basis, then first of all is how they look at the visa regime, how they see the people who wanted to come and contribute into the British economy, get into the skills, and what Barry is saying, then go back and share those knowledge with the rest of their friends and the families around them. And then building up the links and strengthening those relationships. And I think that's the most important, to give the confidence to those young people who are skilled, have full knowledge, innovative, they have proved in other countries. Can they do it? We need to look at that. And I'm sure the future government must be looking at that as well. And as I said, always saying the people who on the front bench have a responsibility to look at if they are seriously wanted to have that relationship further.
If I could just pick up on one of the remarks that you made, Virendra, and that is about the role of women. And actually, if you look at the Nifty 500, the Indian index, only 17% of those companies have one or more women on their boards. Now, that is a huge loss to Indian business and the Indian economy. Indian companies in the UK fare slightly better. 26% of Indian companies in the UK have women on their boards. But then I would simply point you to the family businesses in the UK, and I would say 100% of those family businesses have women not only on their boards, but probably as the CEO in the background. I'm thinking very particularly here. On the day Her Majesty the Queen died, it was also the day when Parvatiben Solanki died. Now, many of you will know the Solanki family, the founders of Garavi Gujarat and GG2 and Asian Trader, magazines, pharmacy business, and so on, a media and publishing empire. She was absolutely every bit as much the driving force of that empire as Ram Solanki was. Yeah, she wasn't the person out in front of the cameras, but actually whereas he was the managing editor, she was the one who did the finances, she was the one who did the business administration. And I think Indian businesses in the UK, the SME businesses in the UK, have harnessed the power of women in a way that the major Indian corporations in the UK still have not, and certainly Indian businesses in India still have not. And I think there's a lesson that the SME community here can teach those larger businesses.
As I can see, quite a few Indian or Asian background young people sitting here. Barry, every household, to a small or large business, cannot run successfully without a woman taking a lead role in that. I'm sorry, I'm taking a little bit away from the real question. If you look at your own household, who manages the money? Who manages the household? Who buys the clothes? Who knows what we need in the house? Small businesses, but Barry said, I come from Southall area. When these small shops were starting, who were looking after the shop? Husband and the son was going to do the shopping, but she was looking after the shop. So women's role is always very important, but it's unfortunate. As you gave the Solankis. Solankis is the best example. But if you look at the woman in the house was never brought into the forefront. We need to look at that when we are talking about those businesses, how the women come on the forefront to display, to say how to run the business and how to run the economy and how to run the family. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to a final question. I mean, whenever we have discussed the contribution of Indian community, we have not only to UK economy, but in every other areas, including NHS. We cannot, whenever this discussion comes up, we cannot ignore the elephant in the room. These ambitions and aspirations are not reflected in the parliamentary success and then which has been highlighted particularly with our party. Now we have discussed this several times, but then what should we do and what should the party do to address that? I'd start with Darren.
Well, I think the programme you ran with Labour Friends of India was a great example of how you can get excellent potential candidates briefed on how the process works. Because a lot of the time when you're running for parliamentary seats, you've just got to know how the system works, how you apply, what the shortlisting, longlisting process is like, how you need to campaign, how you need to try to secure those, the role of community organisations, trade unions. If you're new to that, it can be very, very confusing. And so the programme is excellent, as well as then thinking about how do you actually be a good elected politician, think about your communication skills and that sort of stuff. What we then need to do is, of course, is make sure that when we are selecting candidates for constituencies, that we make sure that they're advertised appropriately, especially where there are demographic opportunities for particular types of candidates and particular types of seats. And I think the leader's office has been, I hope you would agree, pretty proactive on that, this selection round. I don't know if you're keeping a tally yet of how many candidates are kind of going forward, but we're only just started in the process. I think we need to speed up because of the risk of a general election. But I'm hopeful that off the back of the programme and also the work that the leader's office is doing, you'll start to see more of an improvement about what has, if we're being honest, not been a very good level of diversity in the past.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
This is a question which I'm asking for the last 50 years, when the true representation of the society is taken. We were campaigning in the 60s, 70s, within the Labour Party. I'm talking about when the 70s, the Black Section group was formed, Black Trade Union Solidarity Movement was formed, leading members like Bernie Grant, Keith Wars, Paul Boateng, they were in the front line to lead the campaign. The campaign is ongoing, and I think that the party has moved, which party is very keen now. We have few Asian MPs, Black and Asian MPs, few. I don't know the exact numbers at the moment, which I should know. I don't have offhand, but we have few. But we need, if we want the true representation, party need to extend open evenings, open sessions, trainings like Uday has run few courses for those people who are aspirants who show interest. I think the party is now more opening of accepting the brown-black faces to be the future candidates, not only in the areas where we have the large black and minority communities living. It should be open anywhere. Once we have started electing or selecting the candidates in the areas where the minority communities are in smaller numbers, that will be the time when people will start saying it, that party is open now. If you only focusing that, okay, South Hall is mostly Punjabi community, we should have a Punjabi person there, Harrow should be a Gujarati person, Leicester should be a Gujarati person, go to Bradford, you should have a Muslim. That, if we are focusing candidates on that level, then it is not the true representation. True representation comes when it's open, people shut their eyes and look at the candidate on merit. And whether it is the 95%, 99% white area, or it's a minority areas. That's the day it will be recognized the party is fully open. They are on the right directions. I can say that with my experience of working in the Labour Party for so many years, as a full-time employee of the Labour Party, now as a member of Parliament and involved in the politics for so many years. I can say party has moved. We are not the same party which it was in the 70s and 80s. We are a 2022 party, and they are willing, they are open, but now it's also up to our youngsters, our community people to decide whether they wanted to play that part in politics or not. When we're focusing on professional achievements and totally ignore this aspect of side, which people say politics, I say the service. In 1968, when I arrived this country, started as a bus conductor, I also had a choice that time to go into giving the service to the community or go into a business to make money out of it. I must say, and it's not a glorification, I decided to go into the service rather than only into the money-making machine. So that's when, once we decide that profession is important, money is important, but how you decide your time and contribution to the service side of it, that's what we need to look at very seriously. If we demonstrate that we are willing to take that sacrifices and responsibility, I'm sure the party have no hesitation. The present leadership and those people who are around have no hesitation to support and promote those individuals who show that commitment. So look forward, and I can see few people willing to come, and we are, Darren, myself, any other Labour MPs, more than happy to talk to anybody, tell them what our experiences are, what is the best way to go forward, but don't go into this with the clear idea that I want to be MP. I'm telling those people who wanted to be the MPs, there's only 650 MPs in the UK. Labour Party got 30,000 people on the panels. So competition is there. So don't get disheartened. One leader of the Labour Party said Virendra should have been MP in 1983. But I became MP in 2007. Okay, they recognize that I should have been MP, but the opportunity did not come. It doesn't mean that I did not try it. Try it, be in the party, be active, be seen to be, not only seen to be active, but be active. Help work with those people who are in the field. I'm sure Darren don't mind people working in his constituency, coming and learning the ropes. I don't mind anybody coming, do my leafletting, do my door knocking with me in my constituency. That's the learning curve. But I don't blame only on the party. Blame yourself as well. I'm saying as a black person myself. You also take the responsibility, show the determination, show that you want to represent the community in large. And I'm sure we will have more young people coming into the forefront in the coming years, if not the immediate next election.
Thank you. I echo both your thoughts and the program. They've both been mentors on the Mahatma Gandhi Future Leaders program, which looks at the future MPs of Indian origin. And I can certainly say that the leader's office and the party is pretty much supportive of having more Indian origin MPs and other BAME MPs.